Happy New Year. It has been a hot minute since I have been on here, so my video will be a little longer today. I want to share a little bit about my Christmas and New Year's. It's been a super crazy time for me. It started on December 18th when my husband and I drove our daughter-in-law's little car up to New York, and we stayed for a few days in New York. We had some kind of a flu or something that week, and we were so sick when we first left. By the time we got there, the worst of the symptoms had gone. The fever broke, and we were pretty much just had a cold at that point, what seemed like a cold, but it made traveling a little tricky. And then we flew back home about 5 days later, just in time to prep for Christmas. We had about a day and a half to prep for Christmas. My son and his wife and my granddaughter drove down from New York, and we had a beautiful Christmas. We do lots of we have lots of traditions that our family has come to really lean on and look forward to, and so praise God we were able to get through all of that. And then the day after Christmas, we had to quickly strike Christmas and do all the laundry and pack. We celebrated my granddaughter's 4th birthday, and then we packed up the car for an 8-day trip. We left on the morning of Sunday the 28th, and we went to Cleveland, Tennessee for Winter Ramp. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ramp, but that is a ministry that my family's heart has been so tightly knit to. The ministry was started by Karen Wheaton, who is an amazing woman of God, so full of faith. And they have these ramp events all throughout the year, but their biggest one is Winter Ramp, which they hold in Cleveland, Tennessee. And there's 3,000 or 4,000 young people there. The ramp primarily ministers to young people, youth and young adults, but I'll tell you what, my husband and I encountered the Lord as powerfully as any one of those kids in that room. And it is such a mighty way to wrap up one year and launch into the next one. It's our 2nd time going to Winter Ramp, and we're just hoping that, God willing, it can be an annual trip, because it is a powerful thing to do. We take our doggy with us, not to the Ramp conference, but on the trip, and get an Airbnb, and it's wonderful. And then after Winter Ramp, so that goes, it starts the morning of the 20th, or at some point on the 29th, not the morning. But anyway, it's the 29th, 30th, and 31st, and it goes all the way through the change into the new year. And then on January 1st, we went and visited our daughter in Nashville for 2 days. And then we drove all the way to the northwest corner of Alabama, Hamilton, Alabama, where most of the ramp events take place throughout the year, and took our middle daughter back to college and spent a couple of days there. And then we made a long 14-hour trek back to Florida. And yesterday I had one day, we got home late Sunday night, and I had yesterday to unpack, do all the laundry, and repack, because today, as you can see, we're in the car again. We're heading to the other side of the state because my son has a speech and debate tournament at Palm Beach Atlantic University, and so we will be there. It is rigorous. We check in at 7 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and each day the competition doesn't end until 8 o'clock at night, so we'll be gone for, it'll be long days. And then we'll finally make our way back on Saturday afternoon, evening. And then Monday starts up school again. But it's been so long, and I felt like the Lord said, that it's important for me to get on here and share where God is in our story every day, even in the midst of sickness and traveling. So I have made the decision that I'm going to do that to honor him. And hopefully you'll join me on that journey. My encounter with the Lord today was just in the realization of how amazingly deliberately he created us. Oh my goodness. So I was listening this morning to, as I was packing and finishing up and getting ready to start this trip, I was listening to Dr. Mindy Pelz. I love her. She often speaks to, I would say her target audience is like menopausal and postmenopausal women. She's amazing. And I'm in that season of life, so, well, sort of, not quite yet, but I'm getting there. So I was listening, and she was talking about how women, menopausal and postmenopausal women, operate less from their amygdala and more from their prefrontal cortex than the younger versions of themselves. And so that blew my mind, and I saw God. He showed up in my story at that point when I realized that the amygdala is the part of our brain that processes our sense of safety. It's where fear happens. It's where fight or flight or freeze happens. It is the part of our brain that is assessing our environment to make sure that we're safe. So it makes sense to me that women would have a really heightened amygdala function when they're young, because, you know, for the most part, not everyone, but for the most part, we're moms. And we're responsible for the safety and well-being of little people. And that was certainly my story with 7 kids. My life for almost 30 years was wrapped up in making sure that my little people were safe and that our environment was safe. But I think it's amazing that during menopause and then after menopause, our brain function moves from being amygdala centered, or more readily operating from the amygdala, into the prefrontal cortex. That's where we make decisions. That's where I would say wisdom resides in our brain. And it's so cool to me that in the season where we need to be hyper aware of safety and security, God designed our brain to function that way. But when the time comes that we need to be a help and a guide and a source of wise counsel and wisdom to the people in our lives, our kids who are now, you know, adults and entering their adult world, we have a greater capacity in our brain to function in that way. And so it made me think of in Titus, when the book of Titus tells the older women to teach and mentor younger women. And God made our brains to be able to do that exceptionally well. So that's where I saw God in my story today. Write to me, tell me where you saw God in your story today, and come back and hang out with me tomorrow, because we'll chit chat for a brief moment then.